Steve, I understand you recently went to Darfur. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip, the impetus for it, and some of the things that you saw there?
Well, there are a couple reasons. We have a new country director coming into Sudan, and it was very important in quite a sensitive environment to be there and support him and help him develop the relationships that he needs to be successful, largely with the government of Sudan, but also with other major actors, the diplomatic and the donor community. So that was a reason to be there. For Navaraj Gwiliar, who's recently joined from CARE in Pakistan, so very experienced country director now coming into Sudan. And then the other major reason to go was really to spend some concentrated time with our staff in Darfur. We have 390 staff on the ground there, really working under amazingly difficult conditions, but doing incredible things. The scope and scale of CARE's work is fabulous, really. We're feeding in excess of 800,000 IDPs, internally displaced people, in camps in Darfur. We have an emergency logistics program that's called the Joint Logistics Center that manages just about all of the non-food relief items, all of the tents and clothing and blankets and jerry cans and you name it that are needed to support refugees and internally displaced people in Darfur. We have very big involvement in water and sanitation, providing water and sanitation to over 300,000 internally displaced families in camps. Real big activities in livelihoods, in trying to help people restart agriculture, market activities after all the displacement. So probably the biggest reason was to go and be with our folks there and to learn more about the program and also to give it much more attention, not only in Sudan but also more widely. It's a complex emergency, 4 years plus now. It's been going on, unfortunately falling off of the international media attention, but it's still a big humanitarian crisis, and particularly now, on top of all the conflict and instability that has been unfolding over the last 4.5 years, there is also a food shortage, a food crisis emerging overall in the Horn of Africa, and Darfur is certainly going to be affected by that as well. So it's a very complicated soup of things happening and a very kind of entrenched, prolonged humanitarian crisis that we're still engaged with. So that was the reason, really.
Can you paint a picture for us of what you saw on the ground and what kinds of activities the CARE staff were involved in there?
Darfur is an enormous land size. It really is comparable with France and Germany. It's Sahelian desert. It's all very, very dry, scarce water resources. Populations, living really a combination of nomadic existence and some populations that are more stable, trying to eke out a living from agriculture or from small scale trade. There are about 6 million people that live in Darfur altogether. With the different waves of conflict that have happened in Darfur, there are over 2 million internally displaced people. People who've been forced to move, because of rebel group action, because of militia groups that are on the ground, have been forced to move for their own physical protection into internally displaced persons camps. There are about 160 different camps in Darfur, and some of them are really as large as 150, 180,000 people. So, I think you have to create in your mind, the image of large expanses of desert, being makeshift camps setting up, and now 4 years later, people trying to eke out a living in very difficult conditions. Things like water and food rations have been steady and are improving. There's some concern now with the instability in the region that WFP, the World Food Program, which is one of our major sponsors for the 800,000 plus people that CARE supports directly, is having difficulty maintaining the pipeline of food coming from the capital to Nyala, to the the main city in South Darfur, and that's a threat now to the reduction in the ration size, just because there's so much banditry and hijacking of vehicles that's happening on that main road. But the camps are given the standards and the levels of Darfur are good. They're sanitary. There's food available. Housing is a problem, largely because people are so desperate in the camps that they end up selling tents or plastic sheeting and building, from thatch or reed or wood, their own simple shelters. That's a real problem, is maintaining the standard of shelter for people. The humanitarian situation has stabilized in many ways, in a good place. There's some threats to it, whether or not the international community will maintain a commitment, whether or not the recent decision to deploy a peacekeeping force in Darfur will help, whether or not this overall situation of banditry will be reduced. Another big concern in Darfur is really how the nature of the conflict over time and how it changes. At the point that I was able to see it, there were over 28 different local militia groups, 3 different rebel groups. That kind of splintering and factionalization of a conflict like this really means that the conflict almost becomes institutionalized. It becomes so militarized and so criminalized by banditry and by hijacking, by kidnapping, that it makes humanitarian effort very difficult. Let alone the reestablishment of normal life for internally displaced people makes it almost impossible. And one of the major concerns I have in coming away from the situation in Darfur is just how deeply compounded and institutionalized the conflict has become, and how many different vested interests are involved in it. And a lot of times in conflicts like this, if you have access to a gun, you have access to livelihood, unfortunately, and that works to structurally marginalize civilians caught in the middle of it. And once you're in that kind of cycle of control, it makes it so difficult to find a transition. And the risk is that conflicts like this really become very, very deeply ingrained, institutionalized, forgotten by the rest of the world, and civilians are trapped, and they can be for many years.
Just to wrap up, a final question. A lot of care supporters want to know how they can be involved in helping bring about a sustained resolution in the Darfur conflict. Beyond contributing monetarily, how can people be involved?
There are a number of critical things. Keeping this as a key issue in our political process. I was very encouraged to see that all 3 of the candidates, the major candidates now, are really supporting a very strong response in Darfur, want to continue international attention, want to ensure that the U.S. government plays a constructive role in that. That's very encouraging. It's important that Congress knows this and knows your concern, knows our concern, and continues to weigh in about it. I think at the moment with a change of administration coming, in the U.S., it's also an opportune time to maintain the pressure and to continue voice about these issues. That change is also potentially very impactful, with the Sudanese government. So I think those things are all important. My concern first and foremost is for the humanitarian situation on the ground. In the short term and the immediate term, we have to do what we do with our staff. We have to continue the relationships that we have there. We have to continue to fight as strongly as we can for humanitarian space and access to do that. Of course, all of us know that in the long term, the improvement of the humanitarian situation will only come with peace and stability in Darfur, and that's something that we hope for. We encourage supporters to be vigilant, to be informed, to be active, with agencies and with political actors who are trying to influence that. But it's not a role that CARE can take on directly.
Steve, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us and the dedication of CARE staff on the ground. It's always inspiring to hear.
I'm extremely proud to be able to come back and tell everybody about this, and also to hold up the examples of our staff working on the ground, what they're doing. So thank you.